Hey guys, how's it going? Josh here. This is actually my fifth time recording this because every time I've recorded, like a helicopter's gone over my house, or this asshole's been mowing his lawn for like 3 hours. He finds a new thing to mow and he turns it back on. So hopefully I can get it this time. But welcome back to another screenplay. This one is Flash 3, subtitled Rogue's Revenge. This is definitely a good sequel to my Flash 1 and Flash 2 one. So I definitely recommend you guys go check them out. The Flash 1 is called Scarlet Speedster. Flash 2 is called Zoom, dealing with like Professor Zoom. So it's not Hunter Zolomon Zoom, but Professor Zoom Reverse Flash, even though I do a nice kind of blend of both of them in a little way. But I definitely, if you guys want to check them out, they're at the playlist called Hybrids DC Cinematic Universe. I do apologize. The last one I made was Shazam, which was in April, and I feel really bad because every time I make them, I say, oh, I'm going to try cranking these out. This time I'm serious. I'm actually going to crank them out because this is like the mid-season for Comic Book Versus. It's like the mid-season kind of show to kind of be like a filler so we can space out Versus a little bit more this season. So I'm recording these all ahead of time. So by the time you actually listen to this one, the other ones should already be like scheduled ahead of time. So come back next week for the next one. I think it's Nightwing. I think. Yeah. But anyways, this is Flash 3. If you want to start from the journey, like when I first introduced Barry Allen in my DC Cinematic Universe, go check out the first Justice League screenplay. And then obviously he makes appearances in Justice League 2, 3, and his Flash stuff. So without further ado, I don't want to waste too much time. Let's get into it. So, and I forgot to say, this isn't a visual experience as much as it's an auditory experience. So these are more so for you to listen to and imagine the movie I'm telling you versus actually watching a movie, because obviously the screen's not going to change to show you a movie besides showing you the screenplay ones I've made. And also screenplay may be a bit of a misleading term. That's what they've just been called, and the name's really stuck with this, like this show, I guess you could say, but they're more like movie pitches. So that's why some dialogue, there will be like a bit of dialogue, but really it's more so a story outline. So let's get right into it. Deep breath in, let's go. The movie starts with the Flash and Kid Flash speeding across Central City during a nice summer evening. I'd say this is like a late May, early June kind of time frame. And they stop a car chase, a drugstore robbery, and even split duties cooking a dinner. We find out this dinner is actually for Barry and Iris's 3-year anniversary. So this takes place a few years after, the second Flash one. And Wally is now a high school senior, preparing to graduate high school to attend K-Tech, aka Keystone Technical Institute for Science and Technology. So if you don't remember, Wally is actually very smart. He's going to double major in physics and biochemistry. Kind of obviously a little bit inspired by, Barry, but at the same time doing his own thing because Barry never really dabbled in the physics stuff. Barry obviously definitely did biochem stuff because he's a CSI. But moving on from that, Barry's a bit nervous about the dinner, but Wally helps him out, helps him, get, the ingredients he needs for, the dishes and stuff like that. Because they're trying to make Iris's favorite dishes using ingredients from all over the world. So like, for example, let's say Iris likes spaghetti. They're trying to get ingredients from Italy so it could be as authentic as possible. Like, this is obviously a very special dinner. Barry's putting a lot of effort into it, and Wally's obviously being a great, not psychic, but I guess a great wingman, kind of a great partner in helping him get it done. So when Iris gets there, Wally kind of dashes out so they can have one-on-one alone time. And Barry and Iris over the course of decide kind of talk about the relationship, how it's been over these past 3 years. They touch on the rocky stuff, kind of like when they first tried to start dating, and it was really hard because Barry was always leaving to do Flash stuff, or he got called in for like CSI stuff, or Iris got called to do some new stuff, which obviously would coincide with like a Flash thing because Barry would leave to be the Flash, and then Iris would get like a message from her like boss being like, all right, you gotta go cover the story, and so it was kind of hard to start the relationship, but they kept working at it. Eventually they got a rhythm to it. Obviously it got easier when Barry told Iris I'm the Flash, so there's a lot more understanding, a lot more honesty, a lot more trust in it. And they talk about how complicated it got when Wally became Kid Flash, all the Professor Zoom stuff too, and they talk about all these challenges, but that overall it's all brought them closer at the end of the day. Barry talks to Iris about obviously how much he really appreciates her. When his mom was killed and his father was taken away, obviously he felt very alone. But with Iris and everything, and Wally too, it really, helps with that. So, it's kind of a touching moment, touching dinner, stuff like that. But then Barry receives a text message from Wally, which basically just says, the coast is clear. And in like super speed, Barry takes him and Iris to the restaurant they first went out at, which I actually did do in my first Flash movie called Scarlet Speedster. So this is a kind of nod to that. And then in normal speed, so not super speed, Barry gets down on one knee. And with Wally, it's actually funny. So I kind of saw like a little humor in this scene. So obviously Barry's getting down to propose. But I saw it kind of like he was in such a rush to get there because he's so nervous. He forgot the ring. And I could see like Wally realizing that. And Wally quickly, speeding to the house, getting the ring and, kind of dropping it in Barry's hand. So I thought that'd kind of be like a funny scene to do if they were to make this movie. But obviously Barry gets the ring thanks to Wally. Wally, best wingman ever. And Barry proposes to Iris. Iris happily says yes. And Wally, Barry, and Iris head home to celebrate, with some cake and stuff. Because at this point, they've only had dinner. So now it's time for dessert and celebration. So Barry writes his dad a letter sharing the good news, stuff like that. Although oddly, his father hasn't really wrote him back recently. Barry doesn't put too much thought into it though, because he's trying to enjoy his new engagement. And the next day at Star Labs, Barry talks with Dr. Elias, who, if you don't know, is has been a supporting cast member of my Flash screenplays so far. Basically, think Harrison Wells, but I started my screenplays before the Flash TV show started. So this guy is someone who was actually in the New 52 comics when I was first starting my Flash screenplays, and he was someone who was a supporting cast member of Barry's comic back then. So I brought him into this. If you're wondering who Dr. Elias is, basically think Professor Wells. So, but not evil. So Barry talks with Dr. Elias regarding his engagement, expressing interest in inviting some Star Labs personnel, maybe also help with some other things, and they kind of talk about a few stuff. We don't really get to see exactly what they're talking about. We'll get to that later, obviously. But obviously, Dr. Ellis is like, yeah, like I'll definitely, attend your wedding. I'll definitely help you with this stuff, and congratulations, stuff like that. And Barry's kind of, going to, kind of his office area in Star Labs, because he doesn't work for Star Labs, but if you've been following my screenplays, he does tests there on a regular basis just to make sure, he does Speed Force related tests, but also he does tests there to make sure like his body's okay, because he's obviously the first person ever to, have this kind of have these powers, basically. They have this relationship with the Speed Force. So they're constantly monitoring it on a regular basis to make sure nothing, bad happens to him. So, Barry's going past his office, and he kind of has like a flashback, to one of the offices, which was, once Leonard Snart's office, who was an ex-Star Labs engineer who eventually became Captain Cold. So if you want to know more about that, I keep mentioning this, but go back to my first Flash one, Scarlet Speedster, because it all makes a lot more sense. But Barry mentions how he hasn't seen any reports of, Leonard since his escape from custody. Dr. Elias, assumes Leonard's just keeping a low profile. Maybe he decided to let his beef with Barry go in pursuit of peace, which Barry, thinks would be obviously really nice. And would, I guess, make sense because he's been out of the picture for so long. Like it's been a few years now, so it's not like a few weeks, few months. Like this is considerable amount of time has gone by that Leonard Snart is, kind of off the, chessboard, so to speak. So outside of Central City, we see a cloaked figure enter an underground kind of metahuman bar. He gets a beer, which at his touch we see becomes like nice and chilled. And when the bartender asks for his form of payment, the cloaked figure responds to put on this tab under the name Snart. The cloaked figure then turns around, revealing that obviously he's Leonard Snart, aka Captain Cold, and he looks very healthy and in good shape since the last time we saw him. After he finishes his beer, he gets up, heading towards a table that consists of Heatwave, Mirror Master, and Weather Wizard. So they're not actually called this yet. I just wanted to call them that because I know if I called them by their real names, people would have no idea who I'm talking about. So he approaches these three, who, they talk for a bit. They have some banter, kind of to give us an idea that, they've known each other for a while. Maybe they're a crew, a gang. So they're not just strangers. And Leonard kind of points at, a date on a nearby calendar. And the date he's pointing at is an upcoming Friday. And he states that's when they'll come out of the shadows and that's when they'll act. And finally, start their plan they've been preparing. So that Friday, actually at the Garrick High School graduation, Barry and Iris, amongst other parents, family, friends, relatives, loved ones, they watch as this graduation is occurring. And obviously this is Wally's graduation. So Wally's waiting in line for his name to be called so he can get his diploma. Obviously it's a very happy moment. And when Wally's name appears on a fancy glass, like LED screen, a freak storm occurs with Weathered Wizard attacking Wally with a blast of hail. So Wally's able to, evade it enough to hide behind the podium with his diploma, like right there, basically. So he's kind of like, I kind of see it's like a funny moment where he's just like, God, like I was so close to getting my diploma, and this had to happen. So he's like so close to his diploma, but just like so close but no dice. And as the rest of the student class and the faculty, evacuate the area, Barry quickly suits up as the Flash to distract Weather Wizard enough so Wally can kind of, naturally make a break for it to get his Kid Flash gear without drawing too much attention. Because obviously, secret identities, they haven't revealed, who they are to the public yet, and I doubt they want to do this, now, basically. So Barry, spins his hands fast enough to blow Weather Wizard back into some trees. Also, I'm just going to call him Wizard now for future reference because it's easier to say. But so Wizard gets up, summoning bolts of lightning to hit the Flash, like a bunch of bolts, which obviously Barry's able to dodge before reaching Wizard and restraining him to the ground. He handcuffs him, and he also notices that he's using technology like this wand-looking thing, which appears to be using some sort of power supply that Barry doesn't really know what it is, but he recognizes it as similar tech that he may have seen at Star Labs. So he kind of disconnects it the best he can. Seemingly it kind of like shuts off, so like the kind of weather in the area goes back to normal. And Wally, now in his Kid Flash gear, arrives beside Barry, curious, about why this guy attacked his graduation, because obviously they don't know who he is. And Wally actually gives him the nickname the Weather Wizard because as like a joke and stuff, because they think it's over now. They think they've defeated the criminal basically, and they're kind of like, all right, hopefully we can like kind of get this graduation going again soon. And Wally, being the lighthearted person he is, trying to kind of bring humor to the situation, but quickly he feels heat from behind him, and he quickly turns around, seeing this crazy guy essentially in his mind with like a gun blasting flames seemingly, but it's not like regular flames. It's not like a flamethrower. It's like more concentrated. Obviously we know it's like concentrated like plasma heat, but obviously to a regular eye, someone that doesn't know what it is, it looks like this guy's shooting flames. So Wally's able to evade it, while Barry sees Leonard Snart. So Barry speeds over to confront Snart before his speed is negated due to the fact that Snart has the cold field. Now if you don't know what the cold field is, I based my Leonard Snart off of the pre-New 52 one, but also the New 52 one. So at the time, Leonard Snart actually had kind of natural ice powers. Like they did something in the Flash comics where he was able to get the powers of his gun just naturally. So I had Leonard Snart, basically he's a metahuman. And, with that, one of the things I really liked in New 52 is that Leonard Snart had a cold field, which was able to negate the Flash's speed. So it kind of made them both at normal speeds. I thought that was always a really cool thing they did in New 52, so I introduced it to my Leonard Snart. So obviously it's been a while since Barry's fought in Snart, so he kind of forgot about it. And once Barry, reaches Snart and he realizes, oh shit, my speed's gone again because of this cold field, he tries talking to, Snart. Snart is obviously still very bitter about, what happened last time, but also he still wants revenge against Barry for the role he played in his sister's accident. Now, this was a total accidental thing. Something happened when Barry first got his powers with like a power, outage and stuff like that, which he had no control over, but he still feels responsible for because it's kind of due to him because he was the Flash and stuff. And Barry apologizes again because he went through this basically the same thing before during the first Flash thing with Snart. He apologizes for not being more responsible. He apologizes for just how he handled his powers, I guess, when he first got them. But Barry tries telling him it's been years, they've already basically gone through this, like it's time to move on, which obviously Snart doesn't want to do because his sister still hasn't gotten better. So Barry tries getting him to leave Wally alone at least, but Snart responds that like his sister, Wally is like Barry's family now. and he plans on balancing kind of their kind of beef with each other, eye for an eye, essentially. So after saying this, Barry looks at Wally, noticing a figure jumping out of that glass, LED screen from earlier, reaching out for Wally. So Barry, is able to leave Snart's cold field enough to start speeding towards Wally, which ends up with him tackling Mirror Master. Obviously, the guy coming through the glass is Mirror Master. Tackling Mirror Master back into the glass screen, which sends them both inside of it. So Wally finishes dealing with Heatwave. He vibrates his hand through the gun Heatwave has, which makes it explode. However, some component in the gun reacts really violently, and it causes a large explosion, which knocks out Wally. Heatwave actually, he had thrown his gun away because he realized it was about to explode, but it sends him back too. So Captain Cold gets Heatwave and Weather Wizard out of there, while Iris kind of hides, Wally in the nearby woods, because obviously she's still around kind of watching all this unfold, because she's a reporter, so she's going to have to report on this later. So when Wally wakes up, Iris tells him that Barry is gone, seemingly went into this glass and just disappeared, which prompts Wally to immediately run to get the parts of the wand Barry broke kind of earlier from the wizard and take it to Star Labs. So at Star Labs, Dr. Elias examines the wand, confirming it's based on tech they had in development, years ago, led by their ex-employee Leonard Snart. Because one of the things Snart did was he worked on Speed Force-related technologies. So Wally tells him that Snart had 3 other people with him, and they attacked him and Barry today. Dr. Elias asks where Barry is, and Wally says he went into some portal, somehow, in glass, and he and this other guy just disappeared, in this glass, which, obviously Dr. Elias realizes what's going on and what this is, and he takes his glasses off with visible frustration, saying that, Snart is brilliant, but he's messing with concepts he doesn't fully understand and that are unsafe to be messing with. So Dr. Elias, explains that when Barry first got his powers, Argus contracted Star Labs to examine Barry and run tests, which they still do today. However, one of the engineers on these projects with the Speed Force related stuff was Leonard Snart, who used data and theories with the Speed Force to make experimental sciences and experimental technologies, which were meant for the betterment of obviously the society, but kind of got twisted by him when he became evil, essentially. So, for example, his powers came from a cure meant for his sister, which was accidentally, exposed to him, that turned him into Captain Cold. And basically, he continued this stuff going forward, which is probably, I guess, what Dr. Ellis is assuming, probably what he spent the past few years doing, which was furthering, research, making these new technologies, getting equipment, things like that. So, for example, the Weather Wizard wand uses synthetic Speed Force energy to manipulate weather patterns. And where Barry went is something called the Mirror Dimension, according to Dr. Elias, which was a theoretical pocket universe in the Speed Force where all space is available, but no time or direction is available. So basically, you can go anywhere at any time. There's no linear timeline to it. So you could be there for 20 years and see the same stuff, or see the past, or see the future, essentially. It was a theoretical universe, though. They didn't actually think it was real, but it seems like Snart was able to actually find it and actually find some way to access it at will if he has someone going in and out of it, which is basically what Mirror Master is doing. So it's very dangerous, though, Dr. Elias says, and Snart, Snart doesn't know what he's doing. Dr. Elias says, basically the same time that, Barry could die in there, and, he might never be able to get out. So they start kind of brainstorming ways to, basically save Barry, and we kind of transition to the Mirror Dimension, we don't transition there. We transition to basically, the Mirror Dimension. I don't know why, I kind of had a brain freeze for a second, I'm sorry. So he transitions to the Mirror Dimension, where Barry tries going through various portals, but he can't seem to penetrate them at all. So it's kind of like window. It's like you're behind a window glass, and you're you see what's going on. You're trying to go through, but you just can't go because of the glass. So Mirror Master tells him he's stuck there forever, forced to watch the world around him without being able to interact with it. Kind of like how Leonard Snart's sister is forced to live like that the rest of her life because she's in a coma, which seemingly she hasn't woken up from yet. So Barry tries dashing at Mirror Master, but realizes his connection to the Speed Force seems very skewed while in this dimension. Obviously, Barry doesn't really know where he is, allowing Mirror Master to simply kind of throw Barry through a portal and redirect him, from the air to fall and hit the ground. So I kind of see the way Mirror Master uses abilities as a combination of traditional Mirror Master and the Spot from the Spider-Man comics, kind of. So like I see it's like you could really mess around with this and have like a really cool kind of villain, a really cool fight scene, a really cool character with the Mirror Master. So Mirror Master laughs at Barry essentially, because he's defeated. There's no way for Barry to get out, and we don't know why Mirror Master's working for Leonard Snart yet, but Barry's trying to, Barry's kind of thinking to himself, like, who is this guy? Like, why is he doing this, essentially? So at Leonard Snart's kind of warehouse, hideout, whatever you want to call it, he goes over his plan with the, Heat Wave and Weather Wizard, saying that Mirror Master will be the Flash's jailer while they take out Kid Flash. And before, after they take out Kid Flash, they'll commit kind of a heist to get some funds, raise some money. Then they'll rescue Snart's sister, take her somewhere more remote, hopefully get her out of the coma, and then they'll all kind of just part ways and do their own thing, having a small fortune each, and they can kind of retire and do whatever they want, as free men, basically. So Heatwave and Weather Wizard kind of mention that their equipment's now broken, to which Snart says, that can be fixed later on, but it'll take months of, repair work to make them new ones, each. So it's not really a priority right now. However, they need to free his sister before, security and stuff like that starts kind of, going after Lisa, because right now what's kind of gone on, at the graduation's kind of not that big of a deal yet, because it's still being investigated, so they're not releasing much of it. But once they release that, Leonard Snart's, responsible for it, the cops and stuff will probably go after Lisa, because they'll probably assume that, Snart will go after his sister again. So he's like, we need to do this now before the situation gets out of hand and we no longer have the window to basically save my sister. So they head to the hospital, and it's actually, I kind of see it as like a funny scene, Heatwave and Weather Wizard are like disguised as doctors and stuff like that. And they go to Lisa's room, they get Lisa, and they're like heading towards a kind of a secluded area that Colt can, easily, extract her from without drawing too much attention. However, before they can reach them, Kid Flash appears, taking out both Wizard and Heatwave, because obviously they don't have their tech at all with them, while also returning Lisa to her room. So obviously, Captain Cold's really upset about this, really angered by this, and Wally tells him that, since his actions at the graduation, Lisa's been closely monitored, because they figured he'd come for them. They just didn't know when Snart would come for his sister, so it was more of like a waiting game at this point. So Snart attacks Kid Flash, which doesn't go well for Wally with the cold field and stuff, because Wally has no experience really with it. So Colt is able to escape, but not before swearing, kind of revenge on Wally for basically ruining him getting his sister. So Wally realizes at this point also he can't beat Snart alone. He needs Barry's help. So back at Star Labs later that night, Wally and Dr. Elias brainstorm on how they can open a portal to this mirror dimension to rescue Barry. So after some time of, brainstorming and stuff like that, various ideas, Dr. Elias remembers that Wally's suit is really a prototype suit of Eobor Thawne's, partially made to try manipulating Speed Force energy and time to recreate the ability of speedsters. Because, if you want to know more about that, go check out my Flash 2 Zoom screenplay. I'm not going to go into that here because it's going to take too much time overall. But while Wally doesn't try to use those features because, he doesn't need them, Dr. Elias says they're still there, and they could probably take those features out of the suit that Wally has, and maybe make enough of a portal to save Barry. So back in the mirror dimension, Barry is watching all this happen, and he's trying to find a way he can also help. But Mirror Master sees this and blocks those portals from being seen, and instead puts portals showing Barry's mom getting murdered over and over again. And this is kind of like a huge mental torture for Barry, because it's not just one portal. It's like all the portals around Barry are different angles of his mother getting murdered by, Reverse Flash. And it's like if there's like a glass, the TV glass, he's seeing that portal. He's seeing the portal of like a glass cup. He's seen the portal of like the window. He's seen the portal of like, you know, even his mother's kind of makeup mirror thing. Like it's torture. It's like every angle you possibly can, get of this. So at a certain point though, Barry's asking, why Mirror Master is doing this. Why is he even in this dimension? Barry's never met this man before. He's never done anything, to this man before. To which Mirror Master tells him, he's in this dimension because he's stuck here. He was once a researcher named Samuel Scudder, looking into theoretical high energy particles. However, during the apocalypse invasion that occurred, a boom tube opened up nearby him, and the energies from that kind of mixed in with the energies he was, working on. And it, created this portal into this dimension, but also imprisoned him in this portal. And he claims that, Leonard Snart is the only one who's been able to make a portal to him and is the only one that can save him from this, world, because he's kind of stuck here, like I said before. And he's only been able to exist in the regular world for about half a minute before, he feels really weak and, he feels a lot of pain and has to go back into this mirror dimension. So Barry, learning this, feels sympathy for him, saying that, when he gets out, he'll, try freeing him, he and all of his friends at Star Labs. But, Mirror Master's just kind of like, it's not going to happen. Like, you can't even leave here, Barry. Like, Barry, you can't leave without me, and I'm not going to let you leave because Cole's the only one that can save me. So there's no point even, saying stuff like that, because you're basically making an impossible, promise to, fulfill. So after saying this, like I said before, Barry feels some pity, but, Cole allows him to, see all the portals again, including the ones of Star Labs. Which, he sees Dr. Elias and Wally, try their machine out and stuff like that. So Barry really focuses, because he still has a connection to the Speed Force. It's just being kind of weirdly distorted while in this, Mirror Master dimension. So he's able to focus it enough to really help, their kind of portal machine find him in particular, because this thing can open up anywhere. So he's really trying to use his connection to the Speed Force to get this portal to find him. And it does. So with this portal, Barry's able to escape, promising to find a way to save Sam one day. Who at this point, Sam's just kind of like, fuck it. You know what I mean? He's not really invested in Leonard Snart's plan. He's not like the Captain Cold in the comics that has a relationship with Snart's sister and stuff like that. It's not like that at all. He's just more like he wants to get out. And Snart was the only way to get him out. So back on Earth, it's been about 2 weeks at this point. So like I said before, time doesn't really pass in the Mirror Master dimension. So it's been about 2 weeks in real time, and Wally's like basically catching Barry up on what's been happening with Snart ever since and stuff like that. And Barry gets his Flash gear, a new Flash suit actually, from Dr. Elias, since he's been gone and his actual Flash suit's kind of, wrecked a little bit. And he also, Barry gives Wally a box, which is like a graduation present. So Wally says, he still hasn't technically graduated yet, so it's kind of early for this. But Barry reveals, at this point, it's fine. So he opens it, and it's a new costume, actually, which is custom created from Dr. Elias and Barry. And Barry says that, it was supposed to be a graduation present, but he thinks Wally's, it's the right time because, Wally kind of trashed his suit to help make this portal. So Wally puts on the new suit, which, I didn't really think of a design for the suit, but because of the new Teen Titans, but the Titans Rebirth Wally suit, if it was that, I'd be pretty happy with it. I think that was a really cool, outfit that, Brett Booth designed for, Wally in his return to the, DC universe, or at least OG Wally, I should say, because they have the Rebirth, or not Rebirth, they have the New 52 kind of, they have the Black Wally and everything like that. So I'm talking about the Redhead Wally here. That suit he has on right now in the DC comics. But anyways, so he tries this on, and Barry also tells him that he's becoming a man now. He's not really a kid anymore, so along with the new suit, he should probably get a new kind of name to reflect that, as he goes on to college and stuff like that, and becomes his own man. And Wally selects the name Impulse before he speeds off with Barry to stop Cold. So Barry and Wally together are able to track, Captain Cold to the bar he was at before, thanks to Heatwave cracking under interrogation from Argus. And at the bar, we get a showdown between Cold, Captain Cold, Flash, and Impulse. So together, Flash and Impulse are able to defeat Cold, kind of overwhelming him basically just out of sheer numbers. And they send him into a special prison that was made just for him. Like this special prison is basically kind of like the prison they put Reverse Flash in, except for this prison was made to kind of negate his cold field, which is kind of like the main source of his abilities. So Dr. Elliott continues working on a way to free Samuel while also starting to find a way to kind of cure, Leonard Snart. Because if Leonard Snart is cured, he can kind of, go to regular prison, but also because if they can cure Leonard Snart, maybe they could find out a way to, kind of replicate what Snart did and, finally free his sister. Because while Snart's powers came from a failed attempt to free his sister from her coma, the science wasn't all wrong. And Dr. Elias believes that maybe he can kind of finish what Snart started, but do it correctly this time. So they do that, and we also get to see, Wally gets to redo his graduation ceremony, and everyone's kind of happy. But a few months later, we get Barry and Iris getting married, with Wally as the best man. And the movie would end off with, after the ceremony, they're all celebrating and stuff, post-wedding party. And a police report comes in, and, Barry gets a report of it. Iris gets a message from her boss to, report on it. And, obviously Wally, hears about it too. And Barry and Wally dash off to save the day as Flash and Impulse. And that's how the movie would end. So, yeah, I hope you guys liked it. I mean, wow, it's like half an hour long. Oof. Hopefully you guys actually listened to the whole thing. If not, well, you're listening to this, so I guess you did listen to it. But anyways, I'll see you guys next week with the next one. I know people always like a post-credit stinger, and when I haven't done those in the past, people have actually commented, oh, what about the post-credit stinger? So for this one, if I had to give a post-credit stinger, I don't know what I would do, actually. Maybe I would, do something like Cold smirking or something in his prison cell, hinting at his possible escape. I don't know. But with all that said and done, talk to you guys later.